Guillermo. Emil Amok. Amok to you. Emil Amok. Yes, that's me. Welcome. Hi. Hello. Maybe you're starting this, or maybe you're seeing us live. You're lucky if you catch us live because we just pop up. This truly is a pop up. We just pop up. It's Emil Amok's Takeout number 889. We're going to have Professor Dan with me talking about life and the world and why the world is. Well, we can't explain it all, but we're going to try. We're going to explain what 2 weeks means because we got 2 weeks before the end of the world, apparently. That's what Donald Trump thinks. Everything is 2 weeks. 2 weeks. We got 2 weeks of peace. I don't know. We're bombing while we're trying to get peace talks. They're not peace talks. You don't call them peace talks. Very confusing. Very confusing world. And then we come out of Juneteenth, and what do I see coming out of Juneteenth but Donald Trump saying, we have too many holidays. We have too many non-working holidays. Is he picking on black people? Is he picking on people of color? We have too many non-working holidays. He wants us to work. All of a sudden, what you see him doing is barely working. I mean, he's not doing any. What is he accomplishing? I don't see him playing as much golf, but what is he accomplishing? He didn't solve the Ukraine-Russia thing in a day. Much more complicated. I mean, he screwed up the world economy in days. Tariffs about to come, who knows where the tariffs are. But they're on, and people have lost money in the market. So I don't know where we are. So June, but we know that Donald Trump wants you working. This is his attack back at blacks. So we'll talk about Juneteenth. Vincent Chin. This is Vincent Chin weekend. Also, it's the Juneteenth Vincent Chin weekend. We subtitled the show WDAAT. What does an Asian American think? And Juneteenth is always a day that binds us, as I've written in my column in the Inquirer, a day that binds us. Because Juneteenth, it was the day that the slaves in Texas finally found out that, yeah, they're free. And, my buddy Ishmael Reed was telling me that the reason why that's so is because the slaveholders wanted to secure Texas as a slave state. Because Mexico they abolished slavery in the 1820s. And so it was up to Texas to say, hey, those guys in the Alamo, here's the stark reality. They're slaveholders. So no wonder, that they were like the people who lose on issues. They can't loosen their grip to let go of slavery. That's why it took 3 years for the Texas slaves in Galveston to find out that, hey, they're free. You're working overtime. Relax. All right, so Juneteenth is also start of Vincent Chin weekend. It was the 19th of June that Vincent Chin got beaten over the head with a bat. Vincent Chin, the archetypical, iconic Asian American hate crime victim who really woke up a generation of Asian American activists. So we'll talk a little about Vincent Chin and then more on the trans thing. People are wondering, we let the Supreme Court decide, and the Supreme Court failed us. They didn't want to rule on the Tennessee case, at least negatively. They say we're going to leave it up to the politicians, leave it up to democracy. Oh, yeah, sure, democracy. That's called chickening out. Failing our trans youth during Pride Month. There's still some somewhat pro-trans legislation that protect trans rights, but they wouldn't talk about gender, not on the case in Tennessee that bans trans youth from getting the help they need. Still upset about that. So a bunch of things to talk about. And then, the whole idea that, are we at war? Will we be at war? It's going to be 2 weeks. Donald Trump wants 2 weeks. Like 2 weeks is going to that gives him a chance to read the Encyclopedia Britannica on, Iran, the Middle East, and what does it mean for America first? So let's bring up our friend, the friend of the show, College of Ethnic Studies, San Francisco State University, Asian American Studies, Professor Emeritus, my friend, Daniel Phil Gonzalez.
Oh,
He prefers to be on the left side, so I give him
thank
the left
you
side.
for having me. Yes, properly left on the left,
So
and
Dan,
on this very very
it's
windy
windy
Friday
where you are. Yeah,
afternoon. Oh yeah.
yeah, it was. We started to see some really hot days out in the valley in the 90s. It was like 100 the other day, and then just Thursday today, it's, it's comfortable in the 90s with a little wind. Anyway, so what is wrong with the world? This is Trump in America first, or are we? Where is America? Where is he leading us? The more I think of what Trump is saying about anything, about immigration, about the world, about Iran, about Israel, I don't know if. And he said, "I don't know, and no one knows what I'm going to do. I don't even know what I'm going to." I take him at his word. I don't think he knows what he's doing.
There is a plan.
Yeah.
I am sick and tired of Democrats saying he's not got a plan. He does have a plan. It's just a bad plan. The plan is to try and take them at their word, make America great again. But the way they define American greatness is what it was like, maybe let's say 60 years ago,
Yeah.
70 years ago, when the racial lines, in spite of the fact that the Civil Rights Act was signed at around that time, that the racial lines were still very clear. The
Mm.
economic lines were very clear. Up until 1970 or so, if you were a person of color, the likelihood that you were wealthy was very low. The likelihood that you were working class or lower middle class was very high. And so essentially, white supremacy was intact. But then the real effects of the civil rights movement and people actually beginning to exercise their right to vote, the thing that the right refers to as identity politics,
Mm.
which really means people of color organizing
Yeah.
themselves
Right.
and understanding what is at least in their particular group's interest, and voting accordingly, making arguments accordingly in court, because much of what was changed about the direction of American society was achieved through lawsuits,
Yeah. And so
effective lawsuits
and,
at
and
the
now we're
federal
seeing
level.
we're seeing the undoing of that, and it's going the exact same route through lawsuits and
Yeah.
or through Trump taking and doing an unlawful action, and the district courts stepping in. We just had the district court today on a couple of things, on the Mahmoud Khalil, the the Palestinian student from Colombia.
Yep.
Judge says you got to
He
let him
just
free.
he got released, but he's still going to be subject to deportation
Yeah, but I
potentially.
mean, but it has to go through a process. The Trump administration didn't go through that, and so we have another victory against Trump.
Sure.
From a
Yeah,
district.
but it's momentary. Let's keep it
Okay,
in mind. It's
well, that's
momentary. If they're going to appeal. If they appeal, it goes back into court, and then we could get a result like the one in the Ninth Circuit, uh, about whether Trump has the authority to command the National Guard within the state of California. The
right.
problem with their decision is, by the way, that it's not limited to California or Los Angeles. There's no geographic limitation. So the essentially he can command the National Guard in any state at this point.
Yeah, but with permission from the governor, right?
No,
You
no,
don't need permission from a
no.
governor.
He does
That
not
was
need
the
permission from the governor. Now the question is, yeah, yeah. The Ninth Circuit essentially decided. I was surprised. I was surprised that it was three zip.
Mhm.
Everybody agreed that the president has that power. Doesn't need to consult with the governor.
Wow. Well,
That's what the law on its face says. Okay,
yeah.
but the way the court interpreted it is saying his command over the forces in California right now, it stands, and
So
so it's going to
yeah.
be eligible for appeal. But you know what the result is going to be. Now, last week, what we said is that Bonta might go for an en banc review, right?
Bonta, the AG of California. That's what he
Exactly. That he might go for an en banc review. In other words, have all of the judges of the Ninth Circuit, vote en banc. They take on the case, study the case, all of them, and then come up with essentially a vote of the majority.
Yeah.
Uh, and because that would be a better route, I think, in my opinion, it would be a better route than appealing it to the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court, in all likelihood, any of these kinds of cases that get there are going to be decided in favor of the federal government.
Of Trump. Well, I mean, I know there are all these victories, temporary, like you said, like Mahmoud Khalil, released on bail today, federal judge.
Yep.
But even that could be,
But
yeah,
it's a
Trump's trying to
district
import
judge.
him.
It's a district judge. It's at the trial level,
Yeah.
and obviously, the federal government is going to appeal,
Yeah.
and they're a bottomless appeal, right? They can spend as much money as they want on these cases.
Yeah. And look, here's another one just came breaking as we started the show. Judge lets Harvard enroll international students until Trump dispute is decided. So that's kind of temporary. If you're an international student, what would you do? You're allowed to enroll, but would you dare, knowing that it has this whiplash? I mean, it's kind of like the Trump whiplash.
Yes, yes. Well, yeah, I was listening to an international student who had been detained, even though they had acquired legal resident status
Mm,
in the United States, and may be subject to deportation in spite of all that. And he was asked, this was on NPR, he
yeah.
was asked, what would you advise other international students or people who are thinking about coming to the United States for, especially for graduate studies?
What do you
And
say?
he said, I would tell them this isn't the best time to do that. And so he was warning them not to come, essentially.
Well, I mean, if you're being threatened with a kind of whiplash kind of justice or kind of
Yeah,
whiplash reaction, I mean, it's like on again, off again. This is Trump. I mean, this is the way he does business. It's chaotic as hell, and maybe you should wait till things stabilize. But that's
yeah, it kind of depends on the individual situation, right? I knew back in the 80s there were women who wanted to get the hell out of Japan because it was so sexist,
yeah,
and they got student visas to come to the United States, and they might very easily win an asylum case. Not easily necessarily, but they had a really good chance of winning an asylum case, particularly if they showed any real evidence of abuse suffered as a result of Japanese misogyny.
yeah. Well, I guess it's good for Harvard that they got a district judge to say, "Hey, you can enroll all your international students," but boy,
It's going to be interesting to see, yeah, how many people take advantage of that.
yeah,
But it's really a very interesting situation, and so unfortunately, I don't think the our general public and even our voting public, right?
mm,
Because we're looking forward, especially the Democrats, to next year's vote,
yeah,
midterm vote. That I don't think that they are watching all of this stuff, and they don't understand its impact, not its long term impact or even near term impact, but its present impact. Okay, and it's
yeah,
because they don't feel it right away. And I frankly, I don't think they care. I don't think they realize. You have on one hand universities saying some of our best students are
mhm,
international students,
mhm,
many of whom stay and convert to permanent residency and start up businesses that become major engines, right, of the American economy. And so they can say that all they want. When you look at all the people who were on that stage, the billionaires, right? The
Yeah.
majority of them were immigrants.
Yeah.
The majority of them were immigrants. Okay, and and so there's a good side and a bad side, right? The
Yeah.
good side is that's proof that immigrants are really contributing very heavily, not at that level, right, at the billionaire level, to the American economy. That, and more importantly, below that level, immigrants are contributing tremendously to the forward movement of all of American industries, right? All of American industries.
Yeah, I mean that's the balanced way to look at it. That there's a positive side. Let's not forget the positive side. But in the news and the way that Donald Trump acts, it's all one way or nothing because he is out to get those what he calls the. He doesn't call them migrants or immigrants. They're illegals. They're all illegals. They're violent criminal illegals. Just now, as we were talking, he released something. Headline, this is from the White House or their Office of Communications. Every day, the Trump administration is getting violent criminal illegals off our streets. This is here's only a tiny fraction of the criminal illegal immigrants taken off our streets in recent days. And they say there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. There's 16, including Salvadorans, Cubans, Mexicans, Hondurans. There's one from the Dominican, another Salvadoran, another Mexican, a Sudanese, a Chinese national arrested by ICE, conviction for kidnapping with intent to collect ransom in Tompkins County, New York, a 40-year-old Chinese national, another Mexican. I mean, this is the part of the propagandist narrative that migrants are bad. We just got for our safety's sake, forget about the positive of immigrants. It's
They don't at all recognize the positive, and
yeah,
the positives are huge. Remember when they were saying the right wing argument was always consistent, that they're taking our jobs. That's the same argument they made 100 years ago
yeah,
against Chinese. Then they
yeah.
made it again, during the Great Depression, against all Asians,
And
right?
Filipinos, right?
Well, yeah.
We're
Filipinos don't often recognize themselves as Asians, which is kind of interesting.
well, that's the thing.
But yeah, we were not included in that because the American flag flew over our home country.
They just asked us to self deport anyway, right? To go back.
Well, I'll tell you, that's happening.
Yeah,
But it's
I
not.
know.
It's people who are choosing to go back um, are doing that, I assume, because they are not in the kind of danger that others who apply for asylum believe they are in danger, right? Of So they're willing to go back. But I think one of the things that pressures them the most is the possibility that they will be separated from their children, that their families will be broken
Yeah.
up. So they're measuring that, against the potential harm that they might suffer if they return to their home country.
But a lot of it is just like back in the 20s and 30s when Filipinos were asked to self deport, many didn't go because they didn't want to go back with the shame of having left the country and now going back to the Philippines. And now,
Well, yeah,
and
I think,
now it's that family deunification. You know, they
yeah,
they
I agree that shame was part of the motivation to stay in the United States, but I think the greater part was their families were dependent
oh,
on the remuneration that they were receiving from their workers in the United States. And
and
so,
same today, right? The same with
yes,
the
yes,
remittances.
yes.
We sit back.
Well, and with the Bachelor Society, let's face it, those young men were having a good time.
Oh yeah,
They
yeah,
were facing rampant racism and sometimes even lynching.
yeah,
But the reality is that overall, they were enjoying a greater degree of freedom, both economic and social, than they did back in the Philippines, right?
yeah.
Despite all of the racism, despite the exclusion, despite racial segregation, and all the rest of that, the adventure was something that they really enjoyed.
Oh yeah, yeah. And because of that, not a whole lot of them self-deported in the
That's
20s
right.
and 30s.
That's
But
right.
there was also a little switcheroo too when their status changed and they were no longer nationals. They were no. That's when when they were under the American flag. Yeah, they were nationals. They didn't have to go back. But remember, Tidings McDuffie, they lost that status,
Right.
and that's when they said, "Hey, by the way, you can self-deport now." And some comes in. Hey, so all right, so we have this situation here where he's going after immigrants, he's going after people who look like us. Uh, I I don't we are about a week or so outside of the LA raids. And you're hardly hearing anything about the LA raids, but I guess they continue whenever they continue, except that you're not seeing the overreaction on the part of the feds in terms of National Guard and the military or the Marines, although I guess there's still a presence there. You don't
Yeah,
hear about them.
they're maintaining a presence there, and so when uh, when it's unclear whether or not there's a, a real risk, right,
Mm.
to the federal buildings in downtown LA or in any other area, um, that means that there's a question as to whether or not the National Guard is being reasonably deployed, rationally deployed is what I should say outright.
Yeah.
And but there's a cost to that. I mean, it costs us. I bet you that deployment costs us. Oh, I don't know, several $100,000 a
Well,
day,
yeah,
right?
but
Just to
Trump
keep them
doesn't.
there.
Trump with his big ugly bill, he doesn't care about money anymore. He's just throwing it around.
Well, and both
And
parties are
that's the thing.
guilty of that attitude when
Yeah.
you look at the national debt,
Yeah.
and so the indications are all bad. I mean, the Democrats were slow to deal with the national debt. They were slow to deal with reforming immigration policy, right?
Yeah.
And so when they had the opportunity to do those kinds of things, they failed.
Yeah.
They chose the wrong policies to push,
Isn't it
like
funny that
Obama pushing health care
yeah,
in front of major
immigration.
infrastructure investment.
Oh yeah, yeah, or immigration. But isn't it funny? They go for the lowest hanging fruit, which isn't that low, but it's reachable, and that becomes a policy. But you're right. Instead of trying to fix something, Trump is doing these raids. Instead of trying to fix immigration, he all he can think of. Let's get these numbers up. Let's get these people out.
Well, it works. It works for him
Yeah,
because his base wants to get rid of people of color.
yeah,
It's as simple as that. You
yeah,
know. So, it still worries me that so many people, black and Latino particularly,
mm.
are still in favor of Trump. He's not going to be on the ballot, right, in the midterms, but
Well,
they're still favoring Trump and they're favoring his policies, even though it's becoming clearer and clearer that they're the potential targets.
yeah.
You and I are now potential targets of this, and we have to be aware of that when we're driving around the state.
Because we look like the assumption is,
We look good enough. We
and
fit the job,
the
right?
assumption, yeah, the assumption is that you are,
Well,
we
look at
can't,
look at the people. Look at the citizens who have been stopped. And
yeah,
and when they're interviewed, they say what happened, and they say the first thing they asked me was where am I from, or
yeah,
where were you born,
yeah,
and I say about 2 miles from here,
yeah,
that
yeah.
kind of thing.
We're in a shoot first, ask questions later world, and
Yes,
where the assumptions rule, and that's why it's not far fetched for people like me and you, born, we're Native American, well,
and
Native
yeah,
citizens.
yeah,
Yeah, I didn't want to say Native Americans. We're Americans. We're Native sons born
right.
here, and yet we will be
We are
pro-black.
14th Amendment citizens.
Yeah, 14th Amendment. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a sad thing where we are, and it's all part of this America First thing, which the MAGA people believe. But America First with this Iran Israel thing is really becoming undone. I don't. How can Donald Trump say he's America First if he's contemplating a war?
He's not even engaged. He's not even engaged. He says he wants peace, and he says he wants to negotiate. There's an opportunity for negotiation here, even though this war is going on.
Yeah,
But they're not there. Who's
yeah.
in Geneva? Do we have anybody in Geneva?
I
Right now there are discussions going on with the Iranian right
yeah,
representation.
yeah,
Okay, and they, as far as we know, they are legit representatives of the Iranian government. Okay, and what UK is there? They've got representatives there.
yeah,
Germany has got representatives there, right? And we're out of it. So
yeah.
what's he talking about?
Well,
Then the other
I
day
can't.
he used the word "we." As soon as it was clear that Israel was effective in their targeting, all of a sudden it was, well, we did that. Okay, well, fine.
So it's we. Why isn't it they? And we're
It
supposed to be
was
the.
they. It was they less than 24 hours
Yeah,
earlier.
yeah,
They were saying, no, no, we weren't party to this, right? But last week I told you I was watching American deployments of military, especially the Navy,
yeah.
and there
Oh
were
yeah,
three carriers on the move, right?
yeah.
There were
Oh
three
yeah, yeah.
carriers on the move, and
So
it was really clear where they were going. One was clearly going to Hormuz, right? And so that's clearly a protection of Israel's interest against and American interests against Iran.
see now to go back to what you were saying that do people care? Do people really understand, or do they
They
care?
do not. I,
Yeah.
my position is they do not. You know.
And that's the scary thing. That's the scary. And
Yes.
it sort of dovetails with the other thing because you're saying, most blacks and Hispanics and the people who've bled off, from the what was used to be the solid block of people of color who voted a certain way, mostly Democratic, they sort of peeled off for Trump. And if no one's paying attention, the idea that we might see a change here in the United States because people are unhappy with Trump, I don't know if that's really rational at all. People are just if they don't care, they kind of check out and say, "I'll let Emil and Dan deal with that. We don't want to deal with that." And then what kind of power do we have?
Yeah. No, some of that stuff is they want to be on the winning side too, and they,
Oh
they
yeah,
think they think Trump is winning, and the sign that he's winning is the fact that there's so much protesting against him that's going on,
that
and
means he's
so
winning the
yeah,
protest.
they think, oh no, I mean the people who believe in Trump think the protests are small stuff, that's small time. They don't think that's important. Okay,
Oh well,
they what they see is Trump is carrying on his deportations. Now,
right.
some of them want to be pro-Trump because they think if they get stopped, they can say, "Wait a minute, here's my pro-Trump card,
Yeah, and here's my
and
meme card, my meme coin. I spent the million
I got
dollars for this. I put mortgage in my
there
house.
it is. Look at this. I got his. I have Trump tattooed on whatever part of my body.
I got Trump
And
underwear,
they think
Trump
that's gonna.
socks.
I don't know.
Yeah, I got Trump everything. I beat up people who are who are against Trump.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Uh,
want the people who are, that you can't just be against Trump. That's my whole point. Yet you have to understand this thing structurally. You have to understand why the Republican Party is doing what it's doing, and you have to look at the fact that they do have a plan. The plan is Project 2025. It's all there. Okay.
yeah.
So quit saying he's got no plan. Don't pay attention to the dummy. He's like a he's he's a hand
Hey,
puppet.
hey, you're calling
The
Trump a
dude is a
dummy.
big fat hand puppet.
You're
Okay.
you're
You got
calling
to figure out who the manipulator, who's the ventriloquist.
wait,
That's what
you're
you
calling
need to
Trump a
know.
dummy? You're calling him a dummy?
Yes, he's a dummy. He is a dummy.
All right, I will call him a mannequin.
Oh no, man. This guy, well,
Mannequin is just you can shape his arms.
we have a hand puppet, for
Yeah,
president of the United States. That's who are the manipulators of this puppet? That's what you got to do. The Democrats should be talking about campaign finance reform right up front. You don't
yeah,
want corruption. This is corruption. How do we help prevent that? Campaign finance reform. You got to take the money out of campaign financing,
all right.
particularly at the national level.
That is an important fact that I don't see very many people talking about. But that is an important fact. But here's something that Nicholas Kristof, New York Times, wrote when during the King's No King March,
Yep.
uh, around that weekend. He said that there's hope. There's hope after Trump, or there's hope because he pointed to the Filipinos. And I know that because he used the term Filipinos. Yeah, I mean, that's a big deal when you see the term Filipinos used. He said, because if the Filipinos can do it, he said, then America could do it. And of course, he cites uh, what happened to Duterte, who's in a cell in The Hague awaiting trial. So it took a while, but the Philippines and the ICC, they got Duterte to go to trial. Not a whole lot of people followed that, maybe a little bit, but the significance of that is real. If you're wondering if a government, if a country can deal with their autocrats, well, Duterte is one, but Duterte is still a work in progress. I would say go back to the 80s, go back to Corazon Aquino. People power is a real thing, and that should be the model. And it's amazing to me that people do not, that mainstream journalists like Nick Kristof, like the mainstreamers on MSNBC and CNN who analyze and those talking heads, that they I mean they don't listen to me, but when I talk about people power, when I talk about the real affront to autocracy, to dictatorship, to the Marcos regime, you got to look at people power, and you got to see that as a model, and it's a legitimate model. And I think that it people in the mainstream are beginning to see that there might be a light at the end of the tunnel here.
Well, they have to approach this. The Democrats, right, have to approach this in terms of the need for structural change. They got to quit talking about cultural issues and get down and talk about material issues and structural change. Okay,
But
that's the only way this is going to happen.
cultural issues like, for example, trans and all that.
Yeah, in part, sexuality generally. The
DEI.
right has used trans issues as a device that really motivates their base.
Right.
I don't think it motivates the well,
It's a
the
polarizing
independent
thing.
independent voters. I don't think it concerns them that much. I saw a poll that was out last week, and I think it was CNN's poll, and
Mhm.
it showed that even immigration is not in the top three anymore, right?
It always goes up and down. It's never
Yeah,
like the
and
big
and
thing.
sexuality, yeah, but it's look what is Trump doing? I mean,
Right.
it's all focused on immigration, like that's 100% of the issues.
Yeah. You got to fan the flames, and
That's
then you let it
exactly right.
rise. And
And
if you
so
don't
so
fan it, it dies.
immigration, the manipulation of federal forces, both in terms of eliminating departments or shrinking their effectiveness
Mhm.
because they might be critical. They might become critical of Trump policy, uh, and they might inform the public in ways that Trump and his lackeys don't. That the Republican Party does not want the public to be informed about. The
Yeah.
Republican Party has been consistently about defunding CPB and NPR, PBS, right, for
Mhm.
decades, for at least two generations,
Yeah.
right? They've been trying to defund it completely, and
Yeah.
and they failed. But I think now, because of Doge, they can succeed.
Well,
Okay, they can succeed.
they've
Why
made
are they
some
doing
cut.
that? The question is, why are they doing that? Is it because NPR and PBS TV is so biased, or is it because they're simply saying things that the Republican Party doesn't like? And that's it's not about bias.
Yeah.
They don't want people actually telling the truth. They
Well,
don't want people showing people facts.
if the thing is, if you allow a Fox News to exist, you should allow for its counterpart to exist in the world and to go after. I mean, I'm not saying that NPR or PBS serve as a counterpart, but they're more objective. And they're
NPR and PBS are about as centrist as you can get. The problem is, like National Geographic, right? they say things that are true about the condition of the world,
Yeah. Yeah.
particularly things like climate change and their effects on animal life and human beings and all the rest of that, and vegetable life, everything, right? And they talk about health. They talk about real issues, right,
Yeah.
involving health. And they don't want you to know that because that affects a lot of their industries, right? They
No.
don't want you to do that. They resisted on the cancer causing issues involving tobacco products. They
Mhm.
resisted that. And it's not just the corporations that resisted that, it's the Republican Party that resisted that. Okay. It's the so-called moderate wing of the Democratic Party that resisted that. They resisted seat belts
Yeah.
installations in cars. They resisted smog devices to reduce pollutants. They resisted everything all the way down the line. Resistance, resistance, resistance to things that airbags. They were against airbags,
That
right?
people should are happy they have now.
Especially the way they drive. They need
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
They
Well,
need them, man. You
you
know.
know, the thing is, I think people they don't want to participate in these things. They don't want the news. They don't. They have no idea. They really rely on people like us to tell them. They want us to tell them what to think and do. Which
I'm
sounds.
not trying. I'm not trying to tell them to what to think.
I
I'm
know
trying to
you're
tell
nice.
them make
You're
up
nice.
your own damn mind, but you use the facts. You
Yeah,
know.
you're being nice, but I don't mind being an autocrat, a good autocrat, and
I
because
don't want
people because that's what people want. They want to hear
somebody to
what
tell
should
them.
I do, Emil? What should I do? And I'm telling them what they
Yeah.
should do.
Yeah,
Just
no, I'm
vote.
too shy. I'm too shy to do that. The only time that I come off that way is when I get asked a direct question. Like, I'll
Who
be
should I vote
I'll
for?
be at somebody's
President?
wedding. I'll
Yeah.
be at somebody's wedding, and then somebody will say, I'm a veteran. I believe in all of this stuff, and
Mhm.
I want to cut back on the spending of the national budget,
Yeah.
and then they say, and that means we gotta trim, of course, the Medicare and Social Security
Mhm.
and Medicaid, right? And
Yeah.
so I say, well, you can do that, okay, but it's really easy to fund it. And they say, well, Medicare and Social Security are the biggest costs of the federal government. I said they're the biggest cost that the federal government and the CBO disclose.
Yeah.
Said,
Oh yeah. All right. Yeah.
okay. Okay.
Yeah. Because
So, and they're
we're
saying,
not
well, what are
totally
you
open.
saying? And I said, the second biggest cost, right,
Mhm.
is interest on the national debt, right, and military expenditures. Those are also huge costs.
Oh
And
yeah.
so right now, the Republicans say the national debt is just out of hand. And, we can't do this, and they do emotional stuff that kind of mirrors the Democrats when they say our children and grandchildren are going to be settled with it. So that doesn't explain what the hell the national debt effect has. That
Yeah.
does not explain that. They're going to be saddled with this. Come on, man.
Yeah.
Tell the truth.
Meanwhile,
Why is the national debt important?
yeah. Meanwhile, the Republicans are saddling up that national debt. They're growing it and saddling it up and ready to ride into the sunset.
They've done that for 60, almost 70
Right.
years.
They're not cutting it. They're not
You
cutting
know,
it.
you know, the first war to be fought on credit, right? Was
Mhm.
what? Was what? The Vietnam
You
War. And how long were we involved in that thing? From
Ooh,
54 to 75,
long
right?
time.
That's
Yeah.
the whole generation, right?
Yeah. I
Lived
mean,
under that war, even
yeah,
though it wasn't a formal war,
yeah,
right?
this is the thing about the Republicans. They grow that debt just like the Democrats,
No, they did a worse job.
and they're
The
growing it even
Democrats
more.
actually brought the debt down.
Oh yeah, yeah. I
You
mean,
know, under
under
Clinton
Clinton,
and under Obama, they brought the debt down. The
so
debt went up under Bush 1 and Bush 2, both
and,
times. The debt went up under Reagan. And the reason that he decided he has to go back to actually, remember, they had an anti-tax
yeah,
position. The
yeah,
reason they went back to taxing was because of the national debt.
yeah.
So that's
Well,
what they wanted to do.
and Trump is because he's into those tax cuts. The
Tariffs.
debt goes up. If you
And
cut the taxes to get
he
revenue,
actually slipped, and the Democrats didn't even. I would be playing that thing over and over again. There was one time a couple of months ago where he slipped and instead of saying tariffs, he said taxes.
Oh
Okay,
yeah.
I would take that clip and I would keep playing it. Okay, here's the truth, and it came out of his face because this was a Freudian slip. He doesn't
Right.
have much of a brain, okay, but he's got enough to commit a Freudian slip, and here it is: taxes. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay, you got
Well,
to quit looking at Trump as though he's really important. Okay, he's,
well, I
he's
mean,
only important as a figurehead. You know,
yeah, but
he's
he does a
only
lot.
important as a figurehead.
He does a lot of those slips, and the thing is, if it were Biden, they show every Biden slip every time.
I wish
That,
Biden would
well,
just shut the f up.
but every time Biden slips, I mean, I'm talking about when he was president, not
Yeah.
now, not now. Now, I just soon he go away because he just gets in the way. But Trump, Trump slips, slip of the tongue, he made an erection joke about flagpoles the other day, and then and
I
then and
didn't
what
know.
and what about this thing about Juneteenth? He was getting on people about as they were ending their Juneteenth holiday. He was criticizing people for wanting non-working holidays. Hey, this
Well,
isn't
how's he going to feel about 4 day weeks? Because
well.
because that's coming up.
I don't think he likes it.
It's already been argued. This is at least the third or fourth time in the last 20 years that I've heard people talk about the 4 day week.
Yeah.
Okay, and it obviously works in other countries. Okay,
Well, look, let's put it this. If you get 80 hours in 4 days, then you deserve the extra long weekend.
well,
I know workaholics. I know
when
workaholics.
when when
Yeah.
when the budget scare, let's see, which one was it? I think it was around the time of the so-called recession.
Mhm,
Okay, so that would be 2008 to 2010, around that period, right?
mhm.
um when the Obama recovery was underway. Okay,
Yeah.
and it was a very rapid recovery, right?
Yeah.
The uh I lost my train of thought. Oh, the whole issue was, how are we going to get this done, right? And so at the same time that they were doing that, they were doing healthcare.
Mhm.
And so they got to use, this is going to cost us. Okay, what costs us about healthcare is that when people don't have it, they go to emergency, right? And
Mhm.
then they saddle with all kinds of debt, all right?
Yeah.
And it ends up costing the states that have healthcare available, right, more money. And
Yeah.
so preventative healthcare is the way to go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the uninsured, the public ends up paying for the uninsured. The public ends up paying for people's, the lack of
They're
insurance.
going back on it now. They're gonna attack it now. And it's not, remember how they were supposed to have a policy? We're gonna replace it with something even better. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
that never happened.
There's
Okay.
nothing.
That was another thing that was on a 2 week schedule.
Yeah. Everything is 2 weeks. You
Two
fire
weeks.
people in two
Yeah.
weeks. Everything is 2 weeks.
He's just spelling it wrong. It's
With
WEAK. Then we're okay. He's
Yeah,
2 week.
it's 2 week.
He's
T
on
O
a
O
2 week schedule.
W E A
Yeah.
K. It's 2 week.
Yep. There it
Yeah.
is.
So Dan, yeah. So getting back to America first, I'm a little worried about Iran and
A little.
well, it's just that who's in charge. This is what happened. No one wants to take responsibility. And meanwhile, I mean, no one wants to take responsibility for peace talks. There's no peace talks. Um,
Well,
the
there
well, I
are,
mean,
but
they're
it
essentially
involves Iran, Germany, and England.
right. It's
Okay.
essentially somewhat meaningless in terms of the principles. I'm talking about Israel and the U.S. I'll tell you what I have started to do. Uh, I've started to read poetry to try to help me understand what's going on, and so I've been reading Rumi, the poet of Persia, 13th century. Very peaceful. I mean, you look at some of the ideas that Rumi had, and you know, this is the time of the Crusades, a time of sectarian war, and people still honored and respected Rumi. they allowed for Rumi's message to break through, but not break through in the way that would stop anything. But they heard him, and we don't have those voices of peace now.
Well, but see, the they is a very limited they.
Yeah,
The people who appreciated not only Rumi but other philosopher, writers
yeah,
as well. That's a very limited, nearly elite element, right? I mean, most people weren't even literate, right? They
yeah.
they they, they couldn't read. So who is it that is admiring Rumi? Okay, it's going to
Uh,
be people who already have an intellectual, if not academic, foundation, right?
right.
Those are the people. So that's who we read about and their appreciation of Rumi. It's
Hey,
like
hey,
Jefferson,
yeah,
Madison, Washington and Adams
yeah,
and Franklin, Ben
yeah,
Franklin, and who they appreciate, right? And they're half the time they're talking about Frenchmen that were going to be the people who stimulated eventually the revolution, right? The
yeah,
French Revolution.
yeah,
And so they're talking about those folks. They're talking about the Catholic philosophers that developed the notion of liberal
the
notions of
theology.
freedom and
Yeah, liberal
individual
theology.
rights. Okay, so that's the way I was raised on that.
Right, and
Okay,
so you're talking about people, intellectual fringe, meaningless to the people who really have power
that's right.
and unable to really move. But yet, when Rumi died in 1273, there were people he did break through, just not quite in the way. I mean, the message didn't get all the way through so that the Crusades ended, the wars stopped, but
Right.
it was a message that was out there, I guess.
Yeah.
That's the best thing to say. And it's been a message that's been there since the 13th century. And here we are in the 21st century. And there's still a need for this. And it's scary what's happening. Scary what's happening. So you can pray or you could read Rumi. And
And if you're really Christian,
yeah.
right, you can read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Yeah,
Oh, yeah, those guys, the apostles.
yeah. I like Matt myself. Matt.
I like Matthew. I like Matthew.
Yeah,
Uh, Luke's always in red. He's always printed in red.
right.
I mean, who got the direct quote from God? That was Luke mostly.
Yeah, yeah.
But then
Yeah,
Matthew, I like Matthew.
yeah. I like Matthew. But
Matthew.
anyway,
All
so
right.
so
So,
so we're talking about getting rid of Juneteenth, okay? And
yeah,
yes, it is an attack. It's again an attack on Black history and Black culture. What they can't accept and are completely unwilling to accept is that Black history is American history. Okay,
right, right, right.
Mexican American history is American history. Okay,
Boy, they
Native
don't know
American
enough.
history is American history. First Nation history
Yeah,
is American history. Um, the Asian Americans and all of our history in this society, it's American history. They just don't want to accept that because somehow they connect covering that history and showing that there were times when we were the targets of rampant racism.
right.
Um, that's bad, and it's going to turn their own people, white people, against themselves, right?
It's not going to turn white people. It's going to make white people better because they're not going to be ignorant. They're going to know the history and
Well, yeah, but how are they supposed to act? See, that's the
well,
problem.
they're
Are they
supposed
going
to
to act in a manner that's responsible
act,
and to avoid the
act.
problems of history, or are they going to act in a manner that's consistent with reversing all of the gains that have been made by people of color in this society and bringing back white power?
Well, you don't have, all right, but you can also just accept the history and not act at all. Not take any action, not reverse anything. Just say, hey, it's good to know that Americans were racist in the past, and then you'll have enough information to make the right decision on anything. If you have the information, if you don't have information, then you're just listening to propaganda. that
Well, see,
Fox and
even racists can look at those racial issues and say that's what we prefer. Just come right out and do it. Just say it. Just
well,
say
then
that's what we prefer. That's what we're fighting for. That's what the Nazis come out and say right in your face.
yeah,
Okay.
well, I think maybe that's a point. I say that there's history. They should read it. They shouldn't just ignore it. But they choose to ignore it to give some kind of cover. But if they're racist and, like you said, just come out and say it, then I guess it doesn't matter if they know it or don't know it. But it's better if they know it, because then
Well,
they'll have
but
they'll have
the
a
people who are abject racists who are willing to do violence
yeah.
for in order to install themselves as the
Mm.
unquestionable masters
Yeah.
of the society, okay, they know that history and they
Well,
embrace that history and they want to regain the position, the social, political, and economic position that they believe that they enjoyed as a result of that history.
uh,
See,
that's what that's what they should say. They should say, "Hey, we're not afraid for people of color to know the history, and because we're afraid of civil rights activists and that kind of thing, we want people to know the history because we want to restore that
exactly,
racism." They should just
exactly.
say that, and they don't say that, and the fact that they
Well,
they
some do.
use
The Nazis say that.
well, but the American Nazis are they're not as blunt. I don't think. Not, I mean, not the ones who are in the White House. Maybe they will after this. Maybe they will after
Thank,
this
thanks
administration.
for
But
mentioning the locus of some of these folks.
yeah,
You know.
yeah. Well, I think that the whole idea about Juneteenth, and I wrote about this in the Inquirer.net, that what's interesting is it's all based on misinformation and delay. No one got the word. Three years after 1862 Emancipation Proclamation, no one knew. Bad communication. No one knew that slavery was over. Slaves worked overtime, and it's all about what you don't know and what people who do know are able to get over on you. And so,
Well, it
if
was in Texas. It was in Texas. Do you think
right,
that the Texas agricultural owners are
of
going to tell
course
them,
not.
even if
No,
they
of course
knew?
not.
They're not going to tell them. What is
Of
their
course not.
behavior like today? What
Yeah.
what is the elite class of Texans like today? What is their what is their state assembly like
Yeah,
today?
well, they'll get away with as much as they can, and they will use the power of ignorance and the power of the fact that people didn't know, and the power that we might have known, but we didn't. No one was talking, and no one pressed reply all in the email, and so we didn't really understand that the slavery was over. We just thought, let's just continue it on just for a little bit. Yeah, that's where we're at. and
Yeah.
and because even in this modern day, we have Juneteenth instances where people know better, but they're not going to tell you. People know, like, you have rights, but we're not going to tell you. Oh, you have freedom to do
Yeah,
X, Y.
I
You can
agree with
talk,
you. I
but
agree with you,
we're
but
not going to tell you. We're not going to tell you.
no, they got a better position than that now because they have the
Okay.
Supreme Court on their side.
Oh well, yeah. You bring up First Amendment? Screw the First Amendment. You don't have First Amendment. You know,
Yeah.
we
Yeah,
got the Supreme Court.
he's even stepping on the First Amendment for his own people.
Yeah,
All of a sudden, Tulsi Gabbard's got she's being ignored.
yeah,
Mr. Hegseth is being ignored,
yeah.
because he looks like a complete fool when he's called before Congress. He can't answer basic questions from the senators, right? It's like,
Totally unqualified.
don't worry, Hegseth. This is not an IQ test.
Yeah. Boy, he got really dressed down by Elisa Slotkin.
Oh,
Uh,
well, a
the,
real veteran,
yeah,
a real combat veteran.
a real CIA person.
Yeah, a real
I mean,
CIA.
she took him apart. Like, oh my God. So you're going to give me that BS, Mr. Hegseth?
Yeah, well, I
She
hope
was
she
good.
makes the Senate, right?
Yeah. Well, she's a smart cookie, and versus
well, there's a whole
Hegseth.
lot of them. They're coming up. What
Yeah.
Mikey Sherrill is going for governor, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
she's a veteran, and so there's a lot. And I think Sherrill was a chopper pilot too.
yeah. Yeah. She was a pilot,
Yeah,
helicopter.
so yeah. You know what it
Well,
takes to fly a chopper, man? I mean, have you flown in choppers
I've
before,
flown
right?
the choppers.
And you,
I
I,
fly.
I watch the pilots. I've been lucky enough to be sitting in the shotgun seat, right?
Yeah.
And I love watching them work that thing.
Hey, I'll tell you, it was fun. That was one of the fun things about being a television reporter when they said, "Oh, you're going up to the chopper today and you're going to report on this or that." Sometimes I did traffic. Sometimes I reported on fires from above, looking
Right.
down on something. This is back in the 80s. They didn't chase like OJ style people through the through
Yeah,
the
yeah.
street.
That's
You
an LA thing, man.
Yeah,
You
LA,
know,
totally LA thing. But they one in Texas when I was working at a local station, what they did was if you were in Dallas and you had to cross the country or you cross the vast parts of North Texas to another part of the state, instead of doing the freeways or the highways, we took the chopper. And because you can go fast in a chopper,
oh yeah,
I went from Dallas to East Texas in like half an hour, whereas it would have taken about where we were going to go with like 3 hours, two and
right.
a half, 3 hours, and that was fun. Except the the our opponent, our competition in the news, we touched down thinking, oh, we made some good time in our helicopter. They were finishing up the story and heading back in their Lear jet
Ooh, yeah.
back to Dallas. So we had to come up and say, oh man, they finished the story. We're taking a Lear jet and we're in a chopper. Oh, uh, anyway. So
Yeah, that's
all right,
right.
so uh, this is Vincent Chin weekend. This is I love to bring this up because no one does. I bring it up because
Yep.
Vincent Chin is said to have died on all the histories will say, oh, he died in June, and they put the date as June 23rd. That's the day they pulled the plug on him. He
Right.
actually was in a coma starting on June 19th
That's right.
when his killer, Ronald Liebens, swung a baseball bat to his head,
Yes.
and Chin was in a coma from June 19th on. So I always take June 19th, 20th, 21st, 22nd, and then the 23rd, he doesn't wake up. I always take the 23rd, or this period between the 19th and 23rd as a period when Asian Americans woke up. And what was your experience? You went through this strike in San Francisco State. Did you feel a generation of Asian Americans waking up during that whole Vincent Chin period between the 19th and 23rd?
I think that people slightly younger than me, than us of the striker generation, I
Mm.
think a lot of them woke up. I don't think it had that massive effect on the community as a whole, but I think that people 5 and 10 years younger than us definitely woke up. It was unavoidable, right? And
Yeah.
particularly when lawsuits were filed, and especially when the first judge really came out with completely inane statements
Yeah.
like um, the punishment must fit the criminal rather than the crime. Remember what a
Yeah.
complete ass this guy
Well,
was. He had
the,
no business being on the bench just for that statement, right?
yeah, the local courts really screwed it up. Then the feds got in, but then Vincent Chin won at the federal level, but then it was reversed.
Well, no, they achieved a change of venue.
Oh, was that it? Uh,
Well, yeah, you were right that it was reversed, but the reason it got reversed is because they left the city and the state and they moved it to Ohio. You
yeah,
know,
Cincinnati.
Yep.
Yeah,
And what is Ohio? I mean, when you look at Supreme Court decisions, right, all
yeah,
throughout the 50s and 60s, Ohio is there defending really crazy ass authoritarian positions, right?
yeah,
Does Ohio have problems with really strict voting rules, right,
yeah,
about IDs and everything else, and
yeah.
and and uh, uh, you know trying to shrink available voting times and places, all that's Ohio today. That's
Yeah, yeah.
Ohio today. In the 50s, 60s, and 70s, they were exactly the same kind of place, man. You know?
But it's funny how there was a victory. There was a victory, and then they got to change a venue,
Yes,
and they got on the appeal, and
yes,
on the appeal they lost the appeal in
that's right.
Ohio.
And that's when Vincent's mom left the country, right?
Yeah.
Out
Well,
of
I don't think she left the country, but she
She did.
was she won a civil she won the civil judgment, and the judgment was never paid.
That's right.
That's what happened. But anyway, Vincent Chin. If you don't know, if you're too young to know Vincent Chin, check out some of the things that are out there in the internet. Some of my columns on the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund blog. Uh, the whole idea for me, the coincidence of the 19th, always strikes me as having the power to revive that case as important. It's important to know. It's important to understand this case because, I mean, hate crime. If you look at Stop AAPI Hate and the stats they put out, more than 53% of Asian Americans have suffered some kind of transgression, major or minor,
Right.
in the last year, which is a majority of Asian Americans. This is after COVID, after China virus. We're still we're
Yeah, I think
still
we had to clarify, right? Everything from verbal assault
yeah,
and direct insult to actual physical assault
right.
and harm, physical harm.
It's
So that's
everything.
that whole range. And
Yeah,
so those are not, I hate it when the academics influence the discussion, the language of discussion in general terms, and
yeah,
people start using words like microaggression. You know,
yeah. Well,
cut it
well,
out, man.
it's 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 big and small. I say, well, micro can be like someone looking at you funny, like, oh, are you Asian? Oh yeah, someone looking at you funny to look like you. Yeah,
No,
well,
usually it is. Yeah, it can be that small, but
yeah,
usually what they're describing are things that are rather clear, right? Or
yeah,
it's not unclear what their intent was, and
yeah,
so that's fair, as microaggression. But it includes so many acts that people do not understand from your statement of that term, right? So
yeah. Well,
you have to break it down and tell them what is actually being experienced.
name calling, spitting,
Yes.
some kind of slight,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
microaggression makes it sound that is an academic term, but because micro to
Well, it comes out of psychology, right?
yeah,
It's a
yeah.
combination of psychology and Foucaultian thinking, right?
But it's a real thing. It's
It is real.
small to big. It's real. It's racist, and we're experiencing it still.
Well, the reason the term got popular was because people wanted to show that even those kinds of slights had substantial emotional and even physical impact. That it had a psychological impact. That it had stress, implications of stress and
Hmm.
negative health consequences. Right. So
Yeah,
that's why they wanted to draw attention to that. Okay.
yeah,
That it's not only major insults and pushes and shoves and people screaming at you or waving, Nazi flags in your face, uh, that kind of thing, calling you names, right?
yeah,
Racialized names. It's not only that. And so that's what they were trying to do. Unfortunately, you give the right the opportunity to use those terms, right, in
yeah,
ways that allow them to dismiss them as look at it's microaggression. These are little things. I mean, why are people, remember how they resisted hate
yeah,
crimes
yeah,
as
yeah,
a specific area of legislation? Why are we doing that? It's already illegal for people to commit assaults and batteries. It's
yeah.
already
That's right.
illegal to murder somebody.
That's right.
So
Well, we
the
have
Vincent Chin
enhancements.
case, the Vincent Chin case was one of those leading cases, right?
We can
Why do we have to call it a hate crime? You know, just because they bashed his head in with a baseball bat and hit him like 4 or 5 times,
That was because the motivation, the animus comes from race, racial animus motivating the crime. It come with enhancements. Should come with greater penalties. It's
And
different
who
from
resisted that? Who resisted that? Which party resisted that?
other Republicans.
Oh, well, and there's no pattern, right? There is no pattern to any of this, right?
Well, they're just trying to protect their buddies.
But you're gonna vote for these bastards anyway, right? That's the way
So,
it goes.
so Dan, all right, we're Filipino. Is the term
Am I?
flip? Is the term flip? Is that? Should
I'm
we
not.
be?
I'm not Filipino according to real Filipinos that were born and bred in the Philippines and then immigrated here.
I
I am
know.
not. I'm
I
not.
feel that. I feel that too. We're born here.
Yeah, I've been called a fake Ilocano.
We're American Filipinos. All right. So flip. Does the term flip, is that offensive?
To a lot of Filipinos, it is.
It
To
is.
my generation, it was not. It was like It was like saying black.
Yeah.
Okay.
Flip.
It was yeah.
I I I actually like the term. I don't see it. It depends on how it's used, right? But
Yeah, that's right.
flip is sort of our N word.
Yeah,
It's our N word.
it can be used as our N word. Yeah.
So, and we don't have the N word. We have the F word.
Yeah. Yeah.
Flip. And then
Yeah,
we should be.
for us, it was actually an assertion of our ethnicity. It was a proud assertion of our ethnicity.
So yeah, we're gonna be
And people would say, what are you? What's your ethnic? I'm a flip. I'm
flip.
flip. I'm flip.
I'm flip. I'm flip.
A guy whose oversized surfboard I used to borrow,
Yeah.
Virgil Chavez, Vietnam War veteran. But
Yeah.
even before people headed off to the war, when the surf craze was big, we were already doing that. So we'd go up to Bolinas and places less traveled. Because the rest of the beaches, man, from here down to San Mateo County, were a bunch of people riding, surfing foam.
Yeah.
So we'd go a little bit further out of town. Anyway, he had this surfboard, huge freaking surfboard. The thing got to be 7 feet, and the right near the nose had flip on it. FLIP, big old letters.
I see.
Letters. And so, the way you used to take care of your board, where you stood it up, right?
Yeah.
Tail.
Wax it down. Wax
in the beach sand. And so that thing was like a big ass neon sign. Flip.
Flip up. Put that flip up.
Yeah.
I like the term. I'm taking it back. I mean, it's always been there, but now it's been used like, oh, you flip houses. Oh, you flip flop. Flip flop.
Yeah, flip flop.
Politicians flip flop. I'm just flip. I'm just flip.
Yeah.
I'm a flip.
No, they hate it. The new immigrants hate it. I don't mean new immigrants.
They're barely American. They're barely American. We've been here longer.
They don't. Some of these people didn't like Pinoy.
They don't
like Pinoy.
Oh, that's because they can't say it.
Can't
say it. They say,
25, 30 years ago, when the internet was new, some guy had on there that Pinoy is really terrible because it was invented by racist white sailors, right? Who, to talk about Filipinos. And I said, why would the hell would they do that? I said, that 2-syllable thing is a pattern where Filipinos shrink stuff like, for example, cigarette is cigarillo, right?
Yeah.
But
is that true? Is that true, Dan? Is that true?
They turn it around, and how do you ask for a cigarette? Mayroon yose. Yose. You take cigarillo, right? You shrink it down to 2 syllables and invert the syllables. Yose. Okay? And so that's a pattern all throughout all Filipino languages. They do that stuff all the time. The nicknames that they choose, right?
I thought that you just use boy.
They shorten their names. Boy. That's there all the time. Yeah. And the OY or the AY is really common, right?
OY or AY. Oh, so I would be
was an invention by white people is really kind of stupid. But people would do that. They would say, no, that's bad. Don't do that. Right.
An oi. You're an oi.
It's
I
racist,
thought
right?
Pinoy was. I
That's
thought.
racist.
I thought
Okay.
Pinoy was. No, I thought Pinoy was Jewish. Pinoy. Pinoy. Oi 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 oi. Oi oi
Oy, oy. Or
oi.
Australian.
Was it? Pinoy.
Oy.
Oi.
Yeah,
Oi.
no. It's
Oi.
everybody does it. Everybody wants to have their own way of not only commemorating but asserting with pride.
Asserting. All
Their
right.
ethnicity, their national origin, right?
I'm.
So
I'm new wave Phil. I'm new wave flip. New wave
you're
flip.
a new wave flip.
New wave flip.
Okay,
Bringing back
it's
flip.
good.
I mean,
It's
it
good.
shouldn't. Flipping's not just for houses. Flipping's not just for bad politicians. Flips are for flips.
Flips, yeah, yeah. I remember there's a cookie, there's a confection. It's called Flips.
It's a chocolate covered pretzel.
Yeah, is
And
it the one that ends with a Z? Flips.
they're
Yeah, with a Z. Yeah,
FLIPs.
yeah. Okay.
Flips. They get the
Yeah,
flip.
because there was another one that ended with an S, but it didn't last very long, and it was a chocolate mini donut. It was a
Ugh.
small donut. Yeah.
How about chocolate covered popcorn? You think that more chocolate covered? Oh, crackers.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
cracker
Once, well, I kind of draw the line at caramel.
caramel. All right. How about ube
Oh
covered?
man, that
Ube
has gone crazy. That
ube
has gone.
covered.
People
Yeah,
have discovered ube. All of the freaking Asians are using it in
I
so
know.
many different ways, and
Purple. Yeah.
it started with pastries and cakes, right? And then it started moving into salads and
Oh
all
yeah.
kinds of things. And it's really great. I mean, I love it. My mother's island,
Yeah.
the island that she's from, she didn't own the thing,
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
is one of the she's one it's one of the well and it's one of a group of islands right between the larger island of Cebu on the west and Samar on the
Yeah.
east. Okay, so right in between is the Camotes Islands.
Oh, camotes.
Guess what grows there? You
Eh,
get one shot.
Ube. Ube. Oh, camotes. Oh,
Right?
you know.
Yeah, well, camote, right, is a root crop, and ubi is a root crop, right? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
they right next to the camotes, there usually was a plot of ube. So you
I
know,
got it. We're gonna have ube flavored love lube.
whoa, whoa,
Purple love lube.
whoa.
Lablub. You want some lablub?
I,
Some lablub. Put it on
oh
your
boy, I'm not gonna go there, man. We'll get in trouble.
your oxtail with your oxtail bagong and ube. Ube labalube.
Woo.
Ube labalube. Yeah.
Okay, and
Oh, yeah.
we're talking a gel format.
So,
That's as far as I'm gonna go, dude.
okay,
I
that's
don't,
good.
I
That's
can't
good. Leave
believe
it there.
you
Leave
said
it
that.
there. Leave it there. That ube labalube.
Oh yeah,
Ube labalube. Oh
yeah.
yeah.
Sprinkle a
Hey,
little
so
of this.
so so Dan. All right. So I
Okay, how
guess we
about?
covered all the top. Oh, the trans thing. Oh, we mentioned the trans thing.
Yeah,
I
we
mean,
did, we
it's a
did. Well,
it's
it's bigger than trans, but they use trans because it's a really useful device for them, right?
yeah. And they and the Supreme Court stopped and said we're not going to go there, and that's it. That's it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But you see, the funny thing is, if you really wanted to use something about trans that would really militate people,
Mm.
it would be showing Bruce Jenner, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
Because then you say, are you going to let these kinds of people compete in women's sports? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean,
Wait a minute,
that's
wasn't that a decathlon Olympic guy?
oh yeah, Wheaties on your Wheaties. It's on my Wheatie. It's a whitey on the Wheatie.
Oh my God.
Hey, so
Okay,
Dan.
so it's
Hey,
terrible right now. I mean, everything is going the wrong way. The policies are wrong, not just the tariffs. The
yeah,
tariffs are one thing, but Doge, chopping off all of these employees, federal employees, contractors, everything. I was speaking to a contractor last night, one of my former students from graduated from state 27 years ago. And he wanted to talk. He was an international relations major,
mhm,
and he wanted to catch up with me on my perspective on global conditions.
yeah,
And we did. We talked for a long time, and he wants to talk again next week. and I find it refreshing because he's one of the few people that I can talk to about the stuff
Yeah.
that some
Well,
we
yeah.
talk about, and
We
he
got
and he talks with experience.
yeah.
He's got top secret clearance, so he has a lot of insider stuff that he can't share with me, but at the same time, he can give me a yes or no on my perspective on what's going on in certain parts of the world.
Hey, let's play 20
what's hot.
questions. 20
Pardon me?
questions. You play 20 questions. I say
Yeah,
this.
that's right.
Just raise your finger if I'm right.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. Yeah,
Okay. All
it's
right.
kind
Well,
of like
that's
that.
cool. All right. I'm going to ask you a question that it's easy. Um, the Giants got this guy Rafael Devers.
Divers. Yeah,
They haven't won a game yet. Oh, they won one game
yeah,
yesterday,
yeah,
first game. But I think that's good. They got hitters, but I guess I'm a little more excited for the Giants.
yeah.
A little more.
They got a shot.
How about
That was
and
that was a Buster decision, I believe.
yeah, yeah. And
I think
Devers,
it
you got
was
to give him
Mr. Posey.
well,
Mr.
Mr.
Posey.
Posey, yeah. And I like the fact that Devers said to the Red Sox, "I'm not playing third. I'm not playing first." And then he comes to the Giants and says, "I'll play anything you want. I'll play anything." Want.
He's cool. I like the guy personality wise. I
Yeah.
think he's cool. I
Oh,
think
he knows English too.
he's
Don't
good.
let him sandbag. He sandbags people. I
Doesn't
heard
need
him
a
speak
translator,
English.
right? He does.
He knows. He knows. Unless he's like accepting questions for his PhD dissertation, he can get English. He doesn't need Spanish
Yeah.
interpretation. He
Uh,
knows what he's doing.
well, see, now that you've brought that up, have you seen the new restrictive policies that
On
like the Danes have come up with? And
the
yeah,
teams,
yeah, restrictive policies on immigration.
on what the
Immigration.
number of
They're
patients
saying
you're
you
allowed to eat.
gotta, they want to force assimilation. If you're gonna come to our country, you need to develop Danish speaking and writing ability at minimally at the high school level.
All right, then I
That
have
kind of
to like date a Danish woman and have
stuff.
Danish babies, and I'm all in. If they're
Yeah,
gonna do that,
I
you gotta be
prefer yeah, I prefer the cheesy Danish. But
Jesus.
anyway,
No, I mean, if you're going to do that, I mean, like if you're a young single guy from the Philippines and you want to go to Denmark, you say, okay, all right, if you're going to have those restrictions, and I want all in, give me a Danish woman, I'll have Danish Filipino babies,
a
and
lot of that happened actually
yeah,
during the Marcos era because a lot of Filipinos split for Copenhagen.
oh yeah, yeah, and
Amsterdam too. Holland,
I'll
Amsterdam.
put ubi on everything. What?
Yeah, why
Um,
not? An Ubi Danish, man. What the hell? Why not?
Ube, yeah. I mean, don't put it on your pandesal, just on your pandesal. Hey, so all right, and also we have the. Did you see Caitlin Clark play the Valkyries?
Yeah, and she got blocked.
She didn't.
They did a good job of locking her out. She didn't
They,
hit the three.
no threes. No, she didn't. She didn't play well. Um, she's just a human. I was
Well,
telling
she
you.
got bumped around real hard, but in that previous game,
Oh yeah, against the um, Connecticut. The Connecticut. I really like the WNBA,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I like them. They're fun to watch, and when the Warriors aren't playing, although the Valkyries, I mean, whoever thought of the Valkyries, I thought was overthinking it because where's Brunhilde? Where's the Valhalla? It's like, all right, I get it. We're putting on the
Yeah, but they
helmets.
got a great theme song, man. Jeez,
I
Flight,
know that. Oh, that was
Flight
Elmer
of
Fudd.
the Valkyries, man. It's a great theme song.
Yeah, didn't Elmer Fudd? That Elmer Fudd did that.
It's a power song. Elmer Fudd?
Yeah, or Bugs Bunny did.
Oh.
Well, yeah, Elmer Fudd. Yeah. Yeah, Elmer Fudd sang that
Hey,
song.
what's up? Mute.
Yeah, so, the Valkyries. The Valkyries. Okay,
Elmer
I don't
Fudd
think
would be fun. Elmer Fudd doing the Flight of the Valkyries is really
I
good.
don't think he could say Valkyries. Wascally Wabbit,
Yeah,
Wascally Wab.
yeah, that's right. Darn rabbit, wabbit, wabbit.
All right, so the Valkyries are fun.
The flight of the Valkyries.
Valkyries. So,
Okay, wait, no.
all right,
Why are we trying? What? Who let this loose?
so Dan, who's going to win the NBA? It's this game 7, but
Well,
I don't think anyone
Okies.
cares
The
anymore, right?
Okies are. It's the Okies, man.
I mean, everyone thought that it was going to be they were going to maybe the Oklahoma would close it out. They didn't. The Pacers. Everyone thought the Pacers were dead. They weren't. Now here they are. I don't know if anyone cares anymore.
Well, they got their 6. They got their 6 games, so they milked the hell out of it.
Yeah, but I don't think they got a game 7 coming up. I guess
It's like being blessed by a 7-tit cow.
Yeah. It's money. Hey, it's money.
More. Let's hit it.
I don't know. I look. I think it would be good. Well, I don't care anymore. I had my. I like the Warriors. The Warriors would have been great if they got.
Yeah, I have to admit that I just watched the highlights.
Yeah,
you just you go to Amazon.
Yeah,
and you go to highlights.
key plays. Or
key plays.
I'll watch the WNBA. I like.
Oh yeah, no, they're fun. They're fun.
The women are attractive. There's some attractive.
They're fun and they're getting better.
Yeah.
Because they're playing more often and they're getting better. And I like to see the fan base. The fan base is really good. They got a really cool
they
fan
sell
base.
out. They sell out the Chase Center.
They do.
It's something.
They do, and you see a lot of young girls going and being enthusiastic about sports, and that's a good thing.
This reminds me of when I was coaching girls soccer. I coached girls basketball, 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds, 10-year-olds, and then soccer, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I think I got as high as 15, and then they were off to high school. But I enjoyed women's sports because of that, and because I was coaching soccer. Boy, you saw a real rise in the appreciation of women's athletics. Especially in soccer, and now soccer is way up there, right? People watch that, women's national team. Basketball's catching up. All it takes is one star. My era, the star was Mia Hamm.
Mm-hmm.
Great. And since then they've had.
She was the shirtless slider.
Oh no! That was Brandy Chastain.
Oh, that's right, Brandy Chastain. That's right.
Mia Hamm was number 9 from North Carolina. Brandy Chastain was she went to Santa Clara. She was a Santa Clara, and she had the bra, and I think I remember that game. She took the bra off. She won. Great. And then she was at last night's game. So, women's sports coming up. All right, Dan.
I didn't see her take the bra off. I did see her take the jersey off.
She kept the bra on. She couldn't take the bra.
Yeah, I figured you saw something I didn't see, but you're in a privileged position. You're a former coach, so you kind of seen everything.
Yeah, I said, well, your left side could a little work. No. All right. So Dan, listen. Thank you again. We're gonna call it. We're gonna call
always
it
a pleasure. Even though the world is going there.
I say you gotta. This is why we escape a little bit to talk about it.
No, man, we got to get people. People, please pay attention, folks. Don't make me beg.
Okay.
Pay attention to what's happening on a global basis. Don't be led on by what's 6 inches in front of your nose. Okay, you got to quit just talking about Trump. You got to quit talking about Dems. You just got to look at what needs to be done and force the fools to develop a policy that actually addresses real world issues.
Right, and that's instead of playing politics, they should play solutions. And there's none.
There you go. Boy, that was. I think I'm going to quote that thing right there.
Yeah, good.
Don't play politics. Play solutions.
Solutions. There it is.
I'm liking it.
Yeah. All right.
What a way to end this one.
Quote me well.
I will
All right,
quote you.
all
I
right,
will.
Dan. I'll
Thank
talk to you
you.
a bit later. Have a great
Peace
weekend. You
out. Have a
too.
great
Peace.
weekend. Everybody
Peace.
see stay safe and healthy.
Yes, you too. All right, there he goes. Daniel Phil Gonzalez, my friend. I've known Dan a long time. I keep looking for the picture of me and him together when we were like, I think we had to be like in our 20s. I got it somewhere. I just keep filing it in the wrong place. I'm gonna post it. It's funny. I had a perm. Back then. I think I got a perm from shaking hands with Dan. He just got my hair going. Hey, that's it. Have a great weekend. Um, Contemplate. We like to close with a little meditation, a little loving kindness. Loving kindness. It helps. Check out my columns, amok.com. Let's see what else. Substack, Inquirer.net. All right, so we close a little meditation because we send out the love. We send out the love. Because the more we send, the more it comes back twofold, threefold, fourfold. And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Oh, that ease. That ease. More grease if you're not living with ease. More of that ube lube if you're not living with ease. Till next time. Emil Guillermo here. Emil among you. Mahal.